Olá pessoal, esse é mais um Fala Carlão, mas é o primeiro Fala Carlão que a gente vai fazer uma mistura aqui de português com inglês, porque meu convidado de hoje é o Nafeez Ahmed. O Nafeez Ahmed é um jornalista, o negócio ele já escreveu para o The Guardian, que é um dos grandes jornais da Inglaterra, e atualmente ele também é uma espécie de consultor em sistemas, em mudanças em sistemas, dessas coisas todas que se debatem aqui na COP28. Antes de apresentar melhor ainda o meu convidado, eu quero agradecer ao pessoal da Tagromarques, agradecer Ubifol, Grupo Publique e Plataforma Agro Revenda por esta jornada aqui na COP28. Nafeez Ahmed, thank you very much for coming here at my program, Fala Carlão program.
Thank you so much, my honor.
Here, we used to say that nobody was born famous like you are now. But I would like to know about a little about your trajectory, about your history. Tell us.
No problem. I'm an academic. I used to work at university, teaching and researching on international politics. And then I moved into journalism. And I became an environment journalist. I wrote for The Guardian, I wrote for Vice, I wrote about interconnected environmental problems and how they link to politics. And one of the big things that I do now is I work in system change. I run a company called the System Shift Lab, where we advise governments, intergovernmental agencies like the UN and non-profits, how they can do system change, how they can adapt to climate change, how they can accelerate energy transition, and how they can benefit the people and communities.
And here, you used to, in this cup, is the cup of to move, to improve, to turn promises in action. Is it possible?
I think it's possible. I think I'm excited that for the first time at this COP, there are a number of goals which were put on the table by the presidency, which are very new. They've never been done before. So for the first time, we have a goal of expanding renewable energy. Never at any COP, we've had COPs for 28 years. It's the first time we've had a renewable energy goal, and the goal is to triple renewable energy. So this is brilliant. And in this last year, this COP presidency has talked to the United States, they've talked to the EU, they talked to China, they talked to India, they talked to Africa, and they got all of them to say we should triple renewable energy. So this is brilliant. So there's a very strong chance that we could get a deal on global renewable energy target of tripling. It's very good news. Obviously, we just had the loss and damage agreement, which for 30 years, the poorest countries have been fighting for this. Finally now that agreement is in place. It's not perfect, but people were concerned that the World Bank was in charge and it would be business as usual. But I think they managed to get developing countries on the board of the loss and damage fund with the World Bank. So they're going to be able to have some push. So that's a very positive thing. Now we need to have agreement on two other things. This phasing down of the fossil fuels and on climate finance. These are becoming quite controversial topics here. My hope is that we can get an agreement, because if we don't get an agreement on these things, it will be very bad.
In Brazil, we used to say that we are very good with energy, renewable. Almost 100% of energetic cost is from energy, renewable energy. And here we are in a country that they produce petroleum. The countries, the development countries, now used to say that you, Brazil, and another development country, they have to pay this bill. And I would like to know about you if the rich countries will be paid that bill finally.
Well, I think we have, with the loss and damage agreement, at the very least we have several $100 billion dollars pledged to be given by the richer countries mostly for the most vulnerable climate countries. That's not enough money. I believe it's 400 billion. That's a milestone, but that's the first step. We've never had now we have a mechanism to deliver the money and an agreement on how the money will be done. There's still lots of details to work out, but that's a very good first step. But now we have a bigger discussion on the wider climate finance, not just for the damages, but also for the transition. How do we support these developing countries to transition and they need huge amounts of money, not just to protect from the climate chaos, but also to build new infrastructure. We need new energy systems, we need new transport systems, we need new food systems, we need new infrastructure. It has to be jobs, there have to be livelihoods. And of course, if we want to phase out fossil fuels, we have to have something to replace. Otherwise, it will be disaster. So this is the plan that we need in place. We need some very concrete plan on that. Now, I think what we're now waiting to see is, can we get the trillions of dollars? Because this presidency has said, I think, and I'm glad it has said, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber has said, it has to be trillions, not billions. Billions is not enough. So, that's a good thing he's saying it. The question is absolutely right. Are the richest industrialized countries going to cough up the trillions we need? Now, to do that, we have to get the structure right, because there are no incentives. So how do we get really the private sector and the capital to say, let's move this capital into these places, but in a way that is fair and just and doesn't impoverish the people? Because one thing is, you put the money in, and the investors come, and then they go out, take the benefits. No, we can't have that. We have to have investment coming in, and investors take some profit, but the community on the ground takes profit as well, and the country thrives. So everyone benefits. This is structure that we need to agree at this COP. Can we agree? We only hope. You can hope, but we must put pressure on the governments that do a fair and just agreement.
I would, for finally this interview, I would like to ask you about what's the paper of the countries like Brazil, for example, who produce enormous enormous food. How the paper the world expect to the Brazil?
Expect to Brazil
from food. For Brazil is a large food producer. Which paper we have in this new strategy of the world?
So I think Brazil has a big role to play in terms of, first of all, I think Brazil has done some exciting pioneering work on the renewable, and there's a lot of expertise that people can look to Brazil, and they can say, especially in South America, I think the region can look to Brazil for leadership in terms of how do we accelerate renewable transition. That's number one. Number two, there's a lot of work I think that needs to be done within Brazil on accelerating the food transformation. One of the biggest things I'm concerned about in South America generally, including Brazil, is the dependence on the livestock industry, the cattle industry, because this is going to be disrupted by new technologies like precision fermentation, cellular agriculture. These are very fast-growing technologies where you can now grow the proteins in the lab, and it's becoming cheap. So I would like my Brazilian friends to think, how can they transition away? Otherwise, the cattle industries will be collapsing for economic reasons. So that might be a positive thing for environment, but it will be a big challenge for the economy, for the Brazilian economy. So these are things that we need to think about. Obviously, Brazil also is an oil producer, and there is a petrochemicals industry. So I'm excited by what's happening with Braskem. Braskem is the world-leading petrochemicals industry, and it's also leading in sustainable plastics. Many people don't know this. So there's a lot of investment from Brazil in how do we make go from the dirty chemicals to the clean chemicals. So I think a lot of people can learn from this. And in fact, in the BBC, they criticized it. They said UAE wants to do a dirty deal with Braskem on the oil. No, this was not actually a dirty deal. And actually, this wasn't confirmed that this was actually a behind-the-scenes debate or discussion. But what we did, when I looked at this one, and you see, actually, Braskem is a leader in sustainable plastics. So this is a positive. If the discussion is happening, actually, it's a positive thing. So these are the things I think Brazil can look forward to.
I was talking with Petrobras president in these days here in the COP, and he said to me that they working a lot to transforming Petrobras in a company from a petroleum company to a company from energy renewable.
I think this is fantastic and very important. I think we can see that many oil-producing countries are beginning to realize that the age of oil is going to end maybe quicker than we believe. So I think it's very important that we have leadership from companies like Petrobras to transition from oil companies into energy companies. Because one of the things that I told UN leaders here in my speech a couple of days ago is I said to them that the age of oil is going to finish quicker because these new technologies are growing much faster than they believed. And because it's happening so fast, the oil companies will find that their business model is under threat. Forget climate change. Even in from a business economics point of view, it's ending quickly. So there is a win-win scenario where businesses, governments, leaders can prosper by transitioning to the renewables very fast.
So you really believe in it?
I do believe it.
Bom, gente, e com isso eu queria agradecer mais uma vez a Ubifol, agradecer da Tagromarkets, Grupo Publique e Plataforma Agro Revenda. E não esquecem, gente, tá aí na tela, deve ter um QR Code aqui. Você lê esse QR Code que você vai lá para um link top de linha da Datagro e vai ganhar 2 meses de informação grátis. Informação é tudo na vida. Um forte abraço para vocês. Eu vejo todo mundo no nosso próximo programa. Valeu! Esse foi o primeiro programa com esse My English top de linha, hein?